You are listening to the CADDle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CADDle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CADDle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim, your fat and old and goofy host, and with me, as always, is my partner,
Rocco.
See, Rocco, he's dull. He doesn't bring any excitement to the show, and that's why you must all be tortured with the engineering joke of the week. All right, Rocco, you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
All right. So, what is the only engineering pickup line in history that ever worked at a bar?
I don't know. What is it?
The engineer said, "Baby, you must be made of copper and tellurium because you're C-U-T-E." Huh?
Oh my God.
Hey, that's kind of a cute little pickup line. I may try that someday. You can't go wrong with a good periodic table joke. I'm just
saying. you let me know how that works with your wife.
Yeah. No, that's not going to go too far. It's like my wife listens to me anyway. So, all right, folks. So it is just Rocco and I on the show today, and that's the first time it's been like that in quite a while. So we thought we would hit a topic that has kind of been all over the news recently, and it is the residential housing crisis and the new Housing Affordability Act that just passed through Congress. And I know it's a controversial bill that passed without the president's signature, but I think it's going to have a really big impact on the construction world over the next few years. And look, for decades now, the residential construction world has been slow and struggling. Housing costs have shot through the roof, making home ownership harder for a really huge segment of the population. And that means fewer purchases, which means fewer homes to build, which means higher costs, and on and on and on in a downward death spiral, right, for this part of the construction space. And what this new bill tries to do is ease construction restrictions and red tape, alongside limiting the number of residential homes that can be purchased by corporations and investment firms, kind of in the hopes anyway of stimulating new home growth at the local level. So Rocco, let's start with kind of residential work over the last 5 years or so. Have you seen clients working in that space or moving away from it? And do they talk to you about why?
Yeah, the why doesn't really come up, and I think everybody avoids the why because of the political climate, right? But it's you could tell in the kind of work that people are doing, and even in all the construction articles that we read, right, where the shift is moving towards, and it's certainly away from residential work and into commercial, into healthcare, and into data centers, and that's especially into data centers, but I think even it's a little bit concerning because I think even the data center work it's going to start getting to a point where that's going to be capped. I heard a story this past week that even in the state of New York that Kathy Hochul's putting a moratorium on the number of data centers that are being built. So residential has definitely been on the decline for several years now.
Yeah. That's what I've been seeing and hearing too. And I think with the data centers, I think it's got that massive energy drain, and a lot of folks don't like it. And again, that's another one of those politically charged topics. But I think the reality is data center construction is so big. I think it really eliminates a lot of GCs and smaller trade contractors from that. There's only a handful of people in the world who can effectively build those type of data centers. So I think it's great from, if you look at it in a strictly financial standpoint. Oh, it's like $80 billion. That's great. Yeah, but it's for like 2 companies and a half a dozen subs, and that's it. And the rest of us are kind of left out in the cold. All right, so let's get back to the residential side, right? Let's look at some numbers for residential construction, and I think that we can really start to see where a lot of the problems that we've faced as an industry are coming from, right? So for starters, average home prices across the U.S. Have gone up 54% since 2020. That is just insane. Yeah, I mean, in real numbers, that means that a home that cost $250,000 just a few years ago now sells for $385,000. That's the math, right? And I mean, look, that's great if you are already a homeowner, right? It's good for guys like Rocco and I. But for new buyers, right, who have seen average salary growth of under 3% in that same time, it can put home buying just completely out of the picture. The cost of just obtaining a mortgage, right, with the fees and the points and all that, it has doubled in that same time frame, right? And the U.S. government estimating office, right, the GAO and all of those guys, they estimate that we have a shortage of almost 7 million, with an M, 7 million homes in this country. With that many people needing homes, you would think, right, logic would say that industry, the residential industry would be booming, but it has been dying. Pretty much everyone out there listening, I think, would agree, at least at some level, that over-regulation and restrictions on things like prefab homes, they've had a really negative impact on this residential space. And alleviating both of those can be a really good first step. Let's put it that way. So Rocco, what kind of impact do you see, easing permits and environmental review practices will have on residential build? And is it something that you hear clients talk about?
Yeah, look, there's got to be a balance of everything, right? I mean, eliminating, not that this is talking about eliminating, but I mean, eliminating all the restrictions is not a good thing either, right? In light of all the climate changes that are going on in particular. But it's got to be an even balance, because there is a huge shortage, and it's getting to the point. Jim, you've been in my house a number of times, and I live in an average neighborhood, and we were walking around the neighborhood just last week, and my wife says, this house went up, it's just sold for $1.4 million. I'm in the suburb. I'm close to New York City, in northern New Jersey, and it's a nice house, but $1.4 million, it's just, yeah, it's out of reach, and salaries are not keeping up with the pace of the expense. So there's got to be a balance. And having so many restrictions and so many costs just to build is a huge barrier.
Yeah, it's nuts. And look, I had the same thing, man. I live in a middle class residential neighborhood just like you do, right? Except I'm down, south in Jersey, and I bought my house in 2019, and current values, and it's great for me, right? But 4 times what I paid for it. And I paid high at the time, because I really needed the house at that moment. But it's nuts. How can anybody survive and buy at those level of growth rates? It's just insane. I think, look, a huge portion of this bill, and I think, using my own little, conspiracy theory brain, the most important thing in this bill is it's limiting corporate ownership of private homes. And look, I truly believe that the reason we've seen such a downturn in this segment of construction is because large investment firms have been holding homes off the market in order to artificially drive up the prices. Look, there's a benefit for them in collecting tens of thousands of homes and sitting on them, right? And then just releasing enough, to meet, area minimum requirements, right, at exorbitant prices. They also get the added benefit of, huge deductions for the property taxes and maintenance fees and stuff that they pay on those properties. And I think all the, the related, quote unquote costs of holding on to those homes for these investment firms are far outpaced by the insane profits that they are pulling off of the limited number of homes that they're selling. Right? It's kind of the same thing that the diamond markets have been doing for like 150 years, right? They collect all of the world's diamonds and then they release only a set amount of product into the populace to keep the value of the diamonds high. And look, to my mind, being a business owner and a capitalist, that's an acceptable practice on a luxury commodity like diamonds, right? I don't care. Charge what you want for those. But for housing, right, which is a basic survival need, that's not acceptable, right? And you're actually throttling one of the most critical industries in the country, right? Construction. And the whole thing is an unmitigated disaster that is killing the economy. So Rocco, what's your take on corporate ownership of these tens of thousands of homes and the impact it has on the residential world?
Yeah, Jim, you brought this up to me in a conversation probably 6 months to a year ago, and I didn't really process it. I'm like,
another one of Jim's conspiracy theories. We can ignore it.
Yeah, it's not really true, and and then when I started to hear a little bit more about this bill and read about it, and then I was like, wow, I guess Jim's right.
Ooh, you heard him, folks. Jim was right once.
But yeah, that's absolutely insane. I mean, you talk about the rich getting richer. That's certainly a way to make it happen.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. I don't know how that can be allowed.
It's not fair. Yeah.
All right, I tell you what, folks. Let's get a quick break to let our sponsors talk, and when we come back, I want to get into a little bit more on what this bill actually says and how it may impact all of us and our daily work. So stand by, folks. We'll be back in a minute with more of the CADDle Call podcast. Hey everybody, this is Jim and Rocco with ZenTech Consultants, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the training options that we have available here for you guys at ZenTech Consultants. We offer public training classes as well as private custom courses for all of your software and design needs. So, Rocco, why don't you tell the folks what kind of training we offer and how do they reach out to us to get it going for them?
Yeah, Jim, we cover everything from Bluebeam to Autodesk to Microsoft to BricsCAD to civil site design training and beginner through to advanced level topics. Like you said, both public and private courses. If you got a group and want to run a class specifically for your team, we can help you. So just feel free to hit our website. We're at zentechconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK, or you can give us a ring, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
There you go, ZenTech Consultants for all of your technology training need. All right, everybody, welcome back to the CADDle Call podcast. We're talking about the recently passed Housing Affordability Act and how that may impact all of us in the design build world. Now, this act focuses on easing restrictions on building and making houses more affordable and available to everyday people. Now, look, I get it. You may agree or you may disagree with the political standpoints and the structures of this, but either way, it's going to affect you as a member of the construction industry, right? So it's worth us delving into. So look, I think that there's one major component of this bill that I think isn't being talked about enough in the media, and it is the lightening of restrictions on manufactured housing, right? Prefab and modular homes, they've been around forever, and they are much more affordable with higher quality levels than stick-built homes, but they haven't gotten widespread adoption because they've run primarily into regulatory issues. These types of manufactured residences have become mainstays in other countries, right? And they've gone a long way to getting, better, more affordable homes into the average person's hands because other nations have centralized building code enforcement, right? Here in the US, we have different building codes everywhere, as far down as the local municipal level, right? Which makes manufactured homes almost impossible to work with on any type of a consistent basis, right? I mean, the reality is, a pre-built home that, gets an approval just 2 miles down the road from where I am, I may need 26 variance applications in my neighborhood to build the exact same house, right? And this bill has some provisions for setting acceptable baselines nationwide for manufactured homes that would be acceptable anywhere. So Rocco, what's the vibe that you get from clients around manufactured homes? Do they support it or not? And have you had any talks with anybody around this part of the bill?
Yeah, not so many conversations around it, but I mean, it's got to lower the cost, right? If you're duplicating, the more you duplicate, the lower the cost is going to be. I think that's the whole concept around these modular homes. So that the same thing should be true for all the permitting and regulations that are in place. I mean, you got to factor local factors into the mix, but at the same time, you're building. It's a repeated building. You know what I mean? So the cost should be less.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. There's in that video that I shared with you, Jim. They were talking about it's $10,000 just for the steel framing of these homes, just to start. And I guess they're trying to bring the cost of that steel framing down.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, right? So the idea that you can get into a factory, right, and in a factory setting, repeatable, reusable, fixed size, you have set inventory, you're not waiting on shipping and delivery and delay, you know what I mean? All of this stuff is built and you're just doing the same layout. It's like, hey, here's a station. We build the north wall of these 4 model homes. They go da-da-da-da-da, roll it down the line, build another one, build another one, build it. It's factory processing like we do with cars. And what's amazing about it is you actually wind up with a better product because it's never exposed to the elements. It's easier to provide and set standard safety features in place, hurricane strapping and earthquake resistance and things like that in a factory than it is out in the mud and the rain and the snow and the wind in the field. So yeah, it works all across. And you have a much steadier supply chain structure when you've got, those things sitting in the warehouse in the back room rather than waiting for a truck to get them out to, where you are in, northernmost Indiana in January.
Yeah.
So, look, I think Rocco makes a good point, though, right? There's a little bit of push and pull here, and it works on both sides. And there are certainly local concerns you have to look into, right? I think, with anything government related, there's always going to be a pushback and resistance from both sides to any solution, right? And I think it's always a struggle to try and enact changes from the top down in any environment. Doesn't matter what it is, right? So the federal government pushing local jurisdictions to kind of change their process, I think that's going to cause all kinds of friction. But I think it's necessary in this case, right? I think the lack of homes and the ridiculous prices that are out there for the few homes that are available, and the impact, the really negative impact it's having on anybody under the age of 50 at this point, it's catastrophic. And I also think it's killing our particular industry because residential work it's a mainstay of the build cycle we go through every couple of years, right? The ups and the downs, we all know it. And we go through that, and the one thing that we've always been able to count on is it's always going to cycle back because people are always going to get married, and they're going to have more families, and they're going to have kids, and they're going to need homes. But the current structure has killed that. And it's killing the construction industry right alongside of it. And look, I understand that not all regulations can be nationwide, right? The environmental concerns between California and Alabama and Maine are certainly going to be dramatically different, and they need to be maintained. But I think nationwide they've grown too top heavy, too bureaucratic, and they need to be lightened, right? And we need to have reasonable response and approval times written into law. I believe there's a solid mid-ground for things like, manufactured homes, to have an acceptable baseline that may have one or two minor additions required for, earthquake or flood zones. And I think that everybody listening to this show today, I think we all need to get involved at the local level to ensure that this new legislation doesn't meet really heavy local resistance just because it came from the federal level, right? And people don't like having their local power threatened. Look, this is a life raft to a drowning industry and a drowning generation. And I don't think we can let it fall to the side because a few local politicians don't like being told they aren't the absolute kings of their little slice of the world. And look, guys, I don't care which side of the aisle the local politician sits on. It's the left or the right, doesn't matter. This bill is the most important one to impact our industry in decades. And I think it needs full-throated support from everybody. But that's my take. So, Rocco, what's your personal stance on this one, sir? I mean, I think everybody listening knows I'm one of those, left-wing Northeastern Yankee pinkos as a general rule. And you tend to be more on the conservative side of things. What are your thoughts?
Well, unless you're living under a rock, you got to know and understand that the cost of living is just just going through the roof. It's gone through the roof already. The roof is busted.
Yeah, the roof got blown off and just tumbling down the street.
Yeah, so I don't know. You got to think for the masses, right? And the future of the masses. And if the future, like we were saying on commercial break, if the future can't even think about having a home, and it's just put out of their heads, and they just have to settle for living in a little one-bedroom apartment with their 2 cats and 3 kids. I mean, that's not a future. It's not a future for construction. It's not a future for humanity. So, you got to think for the masses and do what's right for the masses, and yeah, got to make it easier. Got to make it more affordable. Yeah. And that's going to open up people's dreams, right? I mean, let's face it, most of us want to own homes, I mean, it's one thing to be a youngster and want to live in an apartment, or it's one thing to love and living in the city. But if you want to live in the suburbs, you want to be able to have your own home, and it's got to be affordable.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I agree 100%. All right, so look, and I know folks out there don't always agree, and that's okay. Whatever your initial response is to this discussion, my good listeners, I think that every one of us needs to take the time to look into the fabric of this bill, and don't just let this pass by as like, another talking point that we all kind of half ignore on the evening news. It's too important. It's going to directly impact our livelihoods and the future of the next generation's ability to live and thrive and develop families, just like Rocco said. Look, and you may, no problem, in the end, you may decide this is a terrible idea and you're going to fight against it. And I'm okay with that. All right. I will be fighting on the other side for it. Right. I am an old combat medic with 10 years of service in uniform. And I think that argument is what makes this country great. Right. It's apathy that can kill a democracy faster than anything else. So do me a favor, guys. Go read it, listen up to discussions about it, and choose an informed position. Even if it doesn't agree with me and Rocco, go out and learn about the new Housing Affordability Act. It's vitally important. And with that, I think we'll get out of here and stop lecturing you guys. Have a good day, everybody. We'll catch you next time on the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody. Today's CADDle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.